Alright, what's up guys? So I'm going to make another video today. A little more detailed than the last one. Have the camera angle right. This is some of the things I made with the printer so far. The Mandalorian helmet. Sort of Omens. It's my favorite print so far. It's Dragon I used with rainbow silk filament. I think it's really cool. It fully moves around. I put a wire in it. Dragon eyes. I love this mug I made that I put my cans in. This is one cool thing I recommend going on Thingiverse and printing. You use zero infill on this. Another thing I did is I cut off the head of this T-Rex, and I'm working on the paint right now. I'm gonna make one 10 times bigger than this and put it on the wall. I think that's gonna be really cool. So let's get into this printing thing. One thing I'm going to say is these rods get really squeaky, and you're going to want to go out to the store and you're going to get yourself some multi-purpose grease, and you're going to lube those things up. Recommend getting Q-tip and lubing the rod up, moving the build plate all the way down, and then just home in the printer, and I'll move it all the way back up, and it'll push in some of that lube up, but you'll be good to go after then. Also make sure these screws are tightened. Mine were loose. I also tightened up the screws in the wheel, since then my Z point has changed. I also got a all metal extruder. That plastic one just broke on me. It was really bad. The filament sensor always was telling me that I had no filament when I did have filament. So I just bypassed it, put a piece of paper in there, and I don't worry about it anymore. I know when I have enough filament, and I will keep looking at it when I need to. So what we're going to do is like what we did in the last video. Assuming that we're going to start from scratch, so have your printer off. Go ahead and grab a caliper. If you have one, hopefully you have one. If you just built your printer, it's good to get one. You're going to measure the top to the bottom on each side. And then you'll use the rods, just turn this up and down to adjust the height, and make sure you have the same height on each side. After, then go ahead and turn on the printer. One of the reasons I want you to have it off is because when you go into leveling, that'll turn all your numbers back to 0. So you can just start from scratch. So I like to do everything off the SD card because you can mess with the settings as you're printing. I find that highly useful. So what I recommend you do right now is we're going to go into print. You're going to start one of your prints, go to adjust, and turn that number back to 0 on your Z point. Whenever you go into leveling, that's where it's saving at. That's your Z point. So we're going to go ahead and go back. After that's turned down to 0, hit stop. And we're going to go to settings, and then you're going to home in on your printer. Your numbers are going to look different than mine because you just set everything back to 0. I've already leveled out my printer and set my Z point. So one thing I recommend ordering off Amazon is some shims. I got some really long ones. I know there was some confusion on the size. So here's the size of the shims. 0.04. That's the shim I'm using. So after you homed in on the printer, you're going to go ahead and go back. You're going to go into temperature, and you're going to turn this up to 50. Yeah. So I was already up to 50 before. So after this heats up to 50 degrees, they're going to go in here, hit settings, and you're going to go level out your print. After you have your Z point changed, if you ever want to check it, this is the way you check. So if you have your Z point already set, you can put a piece of paper under there or a shim. When it does this, just don't let it touch the BL touch. When you do this, you're going to have a gap because you just zeroed everything out. See how it just touched there? See how this moves freely? What you don't want it to do is this. You want it to feel some tension, like it's rubbing against the nozzle under there and against the build plate, but you don't want it to get stuck. You know, you don't want it to move it around. Now on my printer, I believe the middle part's a little higher than the rest. I don't know why that's so, but that's what I think. So what you're going to do from this point, and you have that gap, you're going to do what I have right here. You're going to move it so you have your shim or your piece of paper rubbing against the nozzle in the bed with this gap right here where it's rubbing against the shim, and you feel this tension like I'm talking about. So to do that, you're going to move these arrows up and down accordingly until you're where you need to be, just like I am. After you are to your correct spot, you're going to hit the Z home. It doesn't say save, but that's your save point. When you do that, that's going to save your home on your printer. Now, what I sometimes like to do, if you just, set everything up from scratch like we've been talking about, you just did all these rods and stuff, so everything's going to be out of place, So one of the things I like to do is, before I do anything, now this is optional, is to turn auto level on and measure. Before I measure anything, sometimes I like to do that, and that'll go ahead and give you your measurements. Now you don't have to do it that way, but if you're still having a lot of trouble, maybe go back and try it that way. After make sure auto leveling is off, you're going to go in and you're going to do an aux level. Now when you do an aux level, there's going to be a gap until you hit one of the numbers. See? Big gap. So here you have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I don't worry about 1. Don't stress on 1. Because once you have 2, 3, 4, and 5 leveled, how is 1 not going to be centered up to your nozzle? Because you're measuring the corners. Makes sense, right? At least to me. So what you're going to do is go ahead and hit number 2. You're going to move that under your nozzle, and then you're going to turn the knobs until you're what we talked about at the beginning of the video, where you're getting some movement under here. You can feel the tension, but it's not so much so that you can't pull this out and it's bending this up, okay? You don't want it to bend out, but you want to feel like if you're trying to pull it out, it's going to give you a little bit of a tug. But you don't want it so where, like I said, the paper or the shim you're using is binding and bending up, like, can't do that, going like this. So you don't want that to happen. So go ahead and do all 4 sides. Go to 3. Go to 4. Go to 5. And do that twice. After you've done that twice and you're good with your measurements, go ahead and go back, turn auto leveling on, and measure. Do that twice, Don't focus on these numbers too much. I've seen some weird stuff with them. So I'm going to tell you some weird stuff. you know, like in my last video we talked about the Z point being at 2.48. Since then it's changed between 2.99 and 3.09. I did something really weird. I manually went in and I set my Z point on the file back to 2.48. I went back into leveling, and then when I was in leveling, I didn't change anything. I left my Z point like it was, and I had a big gap. And then I just turned all the knobs until I fixed that gap. Then I did an aux level with my manual Z point at 2.48. And then I measured everything. And then after I measured everything, I had a gap. I had to reset my Z point. And when I set my Z point again, it was at the right place. Like, it moved up to 3.99. And all my numbers were pretty well matched up, and it leveled out my plate pretty good. I don't know why it did that. Some weird thing. I just wanted to talk about it. So you can go in and manually set your Z point and then turn all your knobs to adjust. So after you've measured everything twice, make sure you turn auto leveling off. You go back in and you print. So now you'll see how your Z point was at 0. You'll have a number on there, and that would be your Z point. Now from here, if you're getting like a little bit of a gap or it's too far away, you can always change this. You know, move it a little closer or further away, you know. Sometimes as it's printing, if I'm getting no adhesion at all, I like to move it as close as I can, inch by inch, until I see it get some adhesion and see kind of what's going on. So we're gonna let this thing heat up and see that we're getting some adhesion. Right now I'm trying to do this Star Wars bust. I'm probably gonna come back on later and do a live video today before 5 o'clock. That way it helps some of you guys out, and then we can get some questions out of the way. So I'm just doing PLA, so I'm just going to do 205 and 50. You don't need a lot of heat. One thing I want to talk about is after I washed this thing with soap and water, I got no adhesion anymore. So I ended up going online, and some people suggested hairspray. That really helped. So I got me some of this I found in my bathroom. I heated up the build plate to 50 degrees. I cleaned it off with some rubbing alcohol. You know, if you're getting no adhesion at all, just try rubbing alcohol first before the hairspray. Just clean it off and you should be good to go. You know, you always get a little bit of residue from prints, so you got to make sure this plate's cleaned off. So, you know, heat it up to 50. Clean off the plate with a paper towel or some lint-free cloth. After it's heated up, you know, cleaned off, if you're still getting no adhesion, heat it up, you know, 50 degrees. Spray it with some hairspray. Don't go crazy, you know, like spray a line down, you know, just line all the way to the end. And don't wipe it down or anything. And then once it's got all sticky from the heat, go ahead and print. So this thing should just hone back in pretty soon. Yeah, left a little piece right here because it was like way too close. So it should just make one line right here. If it ever makes the line down the middle of the side, which is a weird thing, you're way too far away. If you have auto leveling on and you go through auto level during this process and it goes to print, you're going to get that line because it's going to move the print too far away. And that has something to do with the G codes. I believe there's like a G28 or G29 code. So if you look into those on Google, you can figure that out. But I just turn it off. I don't need auto leveling. After you've done all these processes, like I haven't leveled this thing in a while, just let it print. So here you can see we're getting it printing, we're getting the adhesion sticking to the plate nicely. So hopefully this helps all you guys. Some of the new stuff I figured out. I'm gonna leave a comment. I can probably go back online later today. I'll do like a live video from my webcam. My webcam's not as good as my cell phone, so that's why I'm mostly doing stuff off my cell phone, because it'll give you better picture quality and make the videos better. So hopefully this helps you guys and helps you with some of the questions you had from my last video. And so please leave a comment if you have any questions. I like to answer questions all the time. I'm pretty sure you've seen that in my past stuff. I will make another video when this is close to done. And like I said, if you guys want, I'll go back live around like 4 o'clock or so. Yeah, I think 3 or 4 o'clock today, Saturday. Okay. Alright, man. You guys have a good day. Later.